Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits. And remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with two other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him. Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But Who the hell's giving? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, one and all. This is Aldo Gandia. This is GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. Let's get it right, Aldo. And this is the first show of the week, a big week here at the Barroom Network as we keep adding more and more programming for all of you Bears fans. It's going to be a great show. Greg has a fantastic guest. And let's bring Greg in now. Are you as tongue-tied as I am over this victory Saturday?
No. Peter Weber tried to wheel the way won't.
That's good. Let me.
No, we got a great guest. Mike McCartney's coming on for a little while now. He's got a Zoom call at 10:30, so he's probably only going to stay on about 23 minutes, something like that. But what a lot of people don't know, everybody knows Mike's an agent, and he's got a great account on X, and that a lot of people thought he was Coach McCarthy in Dallas, and played into that a lot. But Mike spent a long time in the league. He spent time here with the Bears on the pro side, and then he was the pro director in Philadelphia for long football. And he's an outstanding agent, has some great clients, Kirk Cousins and Dean Hutchinson probably being two of his biggest names. And then with the Bears, Terrell Smith is a client of Mike. So I know he'll be on probably in another 2 or 3 minutes.
Very good. I've got a couple of questions for him, too, because I listened to him on the podcast named Scouting the League, and he said a couple of intriguing things, one of them being about the NIL. He talked about that the revenue that these young players in college can generate is either from local advertising, national advertising, or the alumni, which he called the collective. And so you probably know the answer to this. The collective, is that just money that wealthy donators to universities siphon off the players? What's going on here?
I know they have these things. How they exactly work, I'm not privy to that, and Mike probably is more so. And I want to talk to Mike a little bit about NIL too, because I know that's part of their business now. It's part of every agent's business. I had a conversation with Drew Rosenhaus probably a year ago, and he said, "Hell, I'm recruiting them out of high school now because of NIL, because he can make money on the NIL business." So I don't think Mike's gone in that direction yet, but I know there's. I do work, just to put it out on the table. I do work for Mike. I do evaluations for him. And he keeps me very, very, very busy. And there are guys I've been doing within the last year that, are freshmen or sophomores. So they're not, they might not be in next year's draft, but in case something comes up in the NIL side, and he can represent them, he's going to try to do it.
Well, guess what? Guess who has just arrived backstage? Let's bring him in now. His name is Mike McCartney. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. You're looking good, Mike.
Yeah, he's got a golfer's tan. That's what he's got going on there.
Well, I got a pool in my backyard. That's what I got.
Nice.
The whole chest is tan too.
I put the sprinkler system on and I run around. That's what I do. Well, I'll let you guys talk and then I'll jump in with a question or two. Mike, I apologize for interrupting, but I know you've got limited time. Greg has a number of questions. People in the chat will have a question or two, and I got a question or two. So let's get right to it. You guys go at it. Take it away, Greg.
Sounds good.
Well, the first thing I want to touch on, Mike, is because I've given some background about you, so we don't want to repeat that, but how much in your business and every agent's business now is the NIL situation?
Oh, well, you mean how much has it changed our business? It's changed dramatically. It's changed. Well, the first thing I'll tell you is traditionally before NIL, we would worry. In this case, we would worry about the 25 draft and keep our eyes on the 26 draft. We now are tracking the next 5 drafts, 25, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And later today, I'm having a call with a father of a kid in the 2030 draft. So it's literally going to be 6, draft classes that we track. And that is a lot of names and players and trying to figure it out. And then the second thing where it's changed dramatically is agents are going after these kids so much younger. So, there's so many kids, once you kind of figure out if they're a prospect or not, they're already signed with somebody. And so trying to figure out who to recruit, when to recruit them, who from our firm is best to recruit them. This is something that literally I wake up every day thinking about. It's really challenging.
Well, let me ask you this. What are the chances? Let's say, Agent A gets a kid coming out of high school and negotiates an NIL deal for him as a freshman, going into his freshman year in college. What are the chances that player stays with that? Well, number one, he's got to become a prospect. You don't even know he's going to be a prospect when he's a freshman or going into his freshman year. But let's assume that he becomes a prospect. What are the odds of that agent keeping him or other people coming in?
It's a great question, and we talk about it all the time internally. Just because a guy has signed with another agent for NIL does not mean he's signed for the league. I would say probably half the guys probably end up staying. The advantage of signing a guy to NIL is it gives us an opportunity to build a relationship with them and show them that we can do some good things for them. And yet we're also in, an era where there are agencies that they're literally just trying to sign and add guys to a list, and then they don't do a great job for them. We got a player last year that was drafted pretty high, and he had been signed with a different agency, and they just didn't come through with the NIL. And then he switched to us. We came through enough, built that relationship with them, and then when the season was over, he ended up signing with us. So every guy's different, and that's the thing about recruiting. You never know what they're looking for. Who's in their ear. We use the term champion. Who's their champion? In other words, who's the one person they're going to turn to and say, hey, I need validation that this is the right, hire for me. So everybody's different and takes a different approach. And we do, as the season will unfold for the 25 draft, we'll take another run at guys, even if it's just a text, just, hey, if you're okay with your guy, great. If not, let's talk, kind of thing.
Mike,
okay, good. Now,
I was just going to jump in with a question. You were a scout for a number of teams before becoming an agent. How has that part of your upbringing, so to speak, helped you as a player agent?
I think it's helped me immensely. I know the game of football. I know how to evaluate. I know how to talk football. And really it took me a few years as an agent to really understand how to articulate to a player, the scouting process, because I think that's important for players to know, but then B, how do we play to your strengths in one way, but also work on your deficiencies in another way, right? I was talking to a defensive lineman a couple months ago, and his school won't let him rush the passer. And I said, you got a problem. If you can't rush the passer, scouts aren't going to be as excited about you. And so I said, you have to be coachable. You have to do everything your coaches are saying. But maybe in one-on-ones in practice, take that as an opportunity to really come off the ball, be physical, show them you can get some pocket movement, whatever that might be. And now a scout is sitting in the room watching your tape and saying, this guy can't rush the passer, but he comes out to one-on-ones and says, I didn't see that on tape. And now maybe he's a little more intrigued. So that's my football background, where I can kind of see maybe a bigger picture and help these guys stay coachable, because you have to do that. You cannot start doing your own thing as a player, right? But then supplement it with maybe a way to help yourself with the NFL teams as well.
Quick follow-up to that. You were on the podcast named Scouting the League, and you said the 3 attributes you look at when looking at quarterbacks is accuracy, processing, and the it factor. So all of us here in Chicago want to know your opinion on Caleb Williams. How does he rank in that accuracy, processing, and it factor based on what you've seen?
Yeah, the context of that is there's a lot of attributes we look at, 12, 15 different things. But I think there needs to be non-negotiables that, whatever the position is, and scouts and coaches should work together on that. At quarterback, just in my time in the league, I have found that those are the 3. If you have to be accurate, you have to get rid of the ball quickly and process, and you have to lead men, right? I think Caleb, his accuracy is excellent at times, especially out of the pocket on the move. I think processing is really the toughest area for scouts to evaluate when they're in college. Some of these guys lead the league or lead college football in open receivers. It's not that difficult, and sometimes they may only have 3 or 4 tough games a year. There's a lot of offenses in college where they don't even huddle, and they just look to the sideline, and the field's cut in half, and it's a 2-man route essentially. So I think he's got it in him. Everything I had learned about Caleb while he was in college is he has a passion for football. He wants to be great. He's been playing at a high level ever since he was a young kid in high school. And then it factor, just living in the Chicago area, it seems like he's done a great job of, being one of the guys and endearing himself to his teammates. So I know if I was a Bears fan, coming 2 games in, or 3 games for them. It's very promising.
Awesome. Greg?
Hey, one other question. I know Aldo had this, but I'll bring it up. There's a lot of different ways in the NIL world that kids can get money, be advertising or whatever. But I know the question Aldo had was having to do with these collectives that the colleges have. What does that really mean? And
So
how does that fit into the NIL spectrum?
When you think about NIL, really there's 3 pieces to it. There's local marketing. So if you're at North Carolina, the Triangle area, the Chapel area, the local businesses, and right. Then there's national marketing, which is really for quarterbacks and DBs who play for Dion. There's not many national deals outside of those 2 groups. And then we have the alumni money. And, we now have that money sent to a collective. They're collecting money from the alums. And typically what we do is work with the collectives who are in communication with the coaches. And, if we have a player in the portal, we're talking to probably the coaches and the collective about what that could look like. And my big thing with players is let's focus on football first. Let's make sure we find a football fit. If you leave any money on the table, it'll be dwarfed by the NFL money anyway. So if we make a good decision and you get drafted higher, you really haven't lost money. And then, so once you have a good football situation, then it's my job to try to maximize the collective deal. Now, if you're not an NFL prospect, then I think you have to maximize every penny because you're not going to make NFL money, right? And there are a lot of guys in college sports that are probably never going to go pro. But that's where the real money is. It's just local money. There's not going to be much. There's going to be, some smaller deals, national, just for the big guys. And then it's really about the alumni money.
Well, let me ask you this then, because NIL means name, image, likeness. How does a collective figure into name, image, likeness? Other than, it's the old where they used to slip your money under the table. Now they're giving it to you over the table.
Yeah, there's got to be a quid pro quo where the player has to do something for the school, for the university, or the collective, whether it's a social media post, appearances, signings, that kind of thing. You can't. Right. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you, in theory, just can't hand the player money. This NIL thing is really interesting because I think we saw glimpses of it last December where players are starting to understand their power. And, here's what I think. I wonder, as we get into the college football playoff scene this year, are there going to be guys, and I would never endorse this as an agent, but are there going to be players who go to their coach and say, hey, I know you need me, but you got to pay me more to play in the playoff, right?
Renegotiate.
There was a Big Ten school that literally every quarterback transferred, and they had to pay a guy to play the game. And I just think players are understanding they have power, and it's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold.
Wow, that's incredible. Now let's switch gears a little bit. I've never heard your answer to this, but so I want to know a little bit about it. And going back to the draft with Atlanta, you signed Cousins there to a big deal, and then all of a sudden they take out of nowhere with the 8th pick in the draft, they take a quarterback. And I know there were some comments by you after that you guys had no idea that it was coming. What kind of communication did they have after the fact?
Well, they didn't have any before, other than when Kirk signed that night. We did talk about the quarterback room, and they said that they would draft one, but they never mentioned first round. I did hear that they really liked Penix and tried to probe a little bit, but there was no communication prior. The next morning, spoke with the Falcons, and literally, I just said, "Listen, I'm not mad at you guys. You got to do what's best for your football team. I personally don't see how you can equate this to Green Bay. They drafted Aaron Rodgers when Brett Favre had been a starter for 15 years. They drafted Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers had been a starter for 15 years. Kirk Cousins has never even put on a helmet at this point. So it's not the same. Furthermore, Rodgers and Love were drafted in the late 20s, early 30s. Michael Penix is a top 8 pick. And I said, when you take a kid 8, a top 10 pick, you are literally saying to your fan base, this is a difference maker for our football team. And yet he may not make a difference this year. So, in the moment, we thought it was honest, or we thought it was important to be honest that we were shocked that there was no heads up. I wasn't going to lie in that moment. But, at the end of the day, the greatest lesson football teaches you is what do you do when you get knocked down? You got to get back up. So, Kirk and I had a few conversations, and we expressed our thoughts, and now he had to get back up and go play football. So he's done a great job of endearing himself in the quarterback room with Michael, and I think there's great camaraderie there. And hopefully, the 8th pick doesn't play for a couple of years.
Now, how is Cousins doing as far? I know he's full go in practice. Is he ready to go? Could he play this week in this last preseason game if he wanted to? And obviously, will he be ready for week 1?
Yeah, that's our understanding is he's close to 100%. He's feeling really good. When I got in the NFL in the early 90s, the Achilles injury was an 18-month recovery. And then over time, it became a 12-month recovery. And now just modern medicine, it's really down to 6, maybe 8 months. It's pretty incredible. Aaron Rodgers had the Achilles, but he had his in September. So he's got a couple months on Kirk. But I do think Kirk is ready to go. He hasn't said a word to me, so that tells me something, right? Like, and before I asked him how he was feeling, and he said he had taken a really good turn in late July and feeling great. So my expectation is he'll be ready to go week 1.
Do you know the name of the procedure they did? And I can't think of the name they did with mine. I had my Achilles done in 2019, and it was a procedure that at that point was about 5 years old. It was started in Houston. Some doctor in Houston perfected it. And that was supposed to lessen the rehab time to about 8-9 months. But it seems like they perfect since then. So that was 2019 that they've changed the surgery even more so that the player comes back quicker.
Yeah, I think tightrope surgery might be what you're referring to. And that's what Aaron had. Aaron Rodgers wanted to see if there was a chance he could play in the 23 season. Because Kirk was hurt later in the season, as he did his homework, he decided against the tightrope because the urgency wasn't to get back right away. The urgency or the mentality was to make sure he was healthy for training camp. So he didn't have that tightrope. The tightrope surgery, I do think, causes some pain in the foot that you got to work through. I don't know if you experienced that, but
no, I didn't have tightrope. But I forgot the name. But what they did is, what they used to do back when we were younger at scouting a lot was they'd clip off both ends of the torn tendon and then sew the tendon together. And by doing that, they had to stretch the tendon, and then it took a long time for it to loosen up. Well, what they did with me is they take those, a torn tendon looks like a mop, so to speak. And so they take those fingers of the mop and just put them together like this and sew and stitch through it. And you end up having a really stronger tendon from top to bottom than you had beforehand. And the way it grafts together, it just heals that much faster and stronger than it originally was. And you don't have to worry about going through that period of gradually stretching out the tendon.
Yeah. So I know Kirk did not have the tightrope, but I never heard a term for the type of surgery he had. I bet it was probably closer to what you had.
Okay.
Got a couple questions here from the chat that somebody wants to know who oversees. PZ wants to know who oversees the NIL.
I don't really think anybody oversees nationally. I think that's part of the issue right now is there's a court case that I can't remember the judge's name is supposed to rule here. I would think in the next few weeks, and it could change pretty dramatically. I have talked to a lot of college people, and nobody's in the real know right now. So I think NIL, compliance departments are trying to oversee it on an individual school basis. It has been really interesting. We've had a few guys go through the portal, and NIL, of course, is going to come up every time, and every school is different how they approach it. And honestly, 2 years ago was different from last year. So it's one of those very fluid situations, where it literally depends on the school you're talking to. Sometimes, coach will get involved. Sometimes there won't. I probably have spoken to more college football head coaches since December 1st than I did in 23 years before that as an agent. And I think part of what's happening is, for a long time, colleges wanted nothing to do with agents, right? So if there was no personal relationship, you just didn't have a chance to talk to somebody. Well, now you got to have the agents involved. And I think they're realizing that the professionals, as opposed to Uncle Johnny, right, know how to do this, and they don't get as emotional and threatening or whatever the approach is. So I think some of the programs are realizing that, hey, having a relationship with the professional agents is really important and helpful to them.
What's the biggest NIL deal you've ever seen? Creighton Wolfong would like to know.
Man, that's the other thing. When we deal with NFL contracts, we have access to every contract. We don't have access to these NIL deals.
There's no transparency, right?
It's just, you're at the mercy of what your relationship. So we actually try and track, and we code it, like the ones that we know we did. We code one way. If it's a trusted source, which is, who knows how trusted some sources are, then we will note that. And then if it's more hearsay or rumor, we'll note that. Some of these quarterback deals are getting pretty big. There's a 5-star, offensive lineman I'm hearing is getting over $1 million right now, for next year. So the money's definitely gotten bigger, and it's in a sense, I think where the schools are going to have to work through it is kind of like the NFL, the haves versus the have-nots, right? The best players get the most money, and then the guys who really don't have NFL careers, they just don't have very much leverage. I do know there are some schools that are trying to be fair, and they've almost got a tier system where, tier A is for the best players. That's only 4 or 5 guys. Tier B are for maybe the starters that they can't lose. And then tier C is the rest of the team. Because I think they recognize the worst thing we can do is have some guys that we need getting nothing. So, but not every school is like that. There are some schools, like it's squeaky wheel gets the grease. Unless the player complains or threatens to leave, they're not getting what they want. So, like I said earlier, every school is a little different in how they handle it. And in everything we've dealt with to this point could change dramatically over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Let me squeeze one in real quick here. The perception of agents, since I was a kid and watching movies and even cartoons, they would portray agents as somebody who was, a cigar chomping, handing the pocket kind of guy. What is the reputation of agents today? What is going on in the world of NFL player agents and how they are perceived, and spoke eloquently again about really looking out for players' well-being as being important. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think agents as a whole run the gamut of how people see them, even in NFL circles. We're in the ultimate people business, and I'll say this: I think the number one attribute for an agent is credibility. And I think if your yes means yes, and your no means no, and you're a person of integrity and you have credibility, then I think you get benefit of the doubt on behalf of your player. Not everybody's got credibility, and so that can harm some agents. But I do think this is my 24th year, and I have seen a change where it's let's say it this way: 24 years ago, we were a necessary evil. Maybe not quite a necessary evil today, but it's not like as a whole the agent community has the best reputation. So it runs the gamut for sure.
Well, Michael, thank you very much. I know you got a call in a couple of minutes that you got to hop on. So thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it, and hope we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
Okay, buddy.
Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye. What a great guy. So how long have you known him?
20-something years.
Wow. So he was in the scouting business when
he was here.
He was with the Bears. That's right.
Right. Before we came.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to Philly, and he became the pro director in Philly. Mm-hmm. And then he left to go, while he was in Philly, he left to go in the agent business, where I got to know, I know Mike and talked to him, but I was down at the Senior Bowl, I'm going to say 10 years ago or something. And we shared a car going back and forth to practice. And so, we got to talk a lot. That's when I really got to know him.
Yeah.
And just a really good guy. And if his family comes from a super family, his dad's one of the most famous coaches in Colorado football history. Mm-hmm. The family itself is all about football, and he's a good person. You're never going to hear Mike say any 4-letter words. Yeah. In fact, it was funny when I got on the phone with him, I make sure I don't say any 4-letter words.
You should have told me that before you brought him on. I unfortunately, this question came in a little late. Maybe you can help answer it. Sports Chicago style says, with a lot of players being their own agent, the job of agents continue on.
Yeah, because there's not very many that are qualified or even able to do their own contract. And part of it because it gets personal, and you got to argue back and forth. The team is arguing on their behalf, and they're using figures based on, averages of players that have the similar type skill set, similar experience, similar amount of starting time, etc. And so they've got a bundle of different things to use to back their position. And players doing it by himself, what's he going? I'm great. Well, yeah. Now, in fairness, the Players Association will help them and give them figures and stuff. But it's just, you got to be the one sitting in the room, and it's hard. It's very, very difficult because you can have you can go back to like The Godfather. Hey, it's only business. So It's not personal that I'm insulting you, but
That's right.
So don't take it that way. And, it's part of the business. And the player has got to do that. Now, let's take Caleb. From what I understand, Caleb, he never hired an agent. Now, he had advisors. But Caleb was the one sitting in the room. That, and especially for a deal like that. Now, it's a slotted deal, and there's been previous contracts. You're going to work off the deal that Young got last year. So, there's not that much to negotiate. It's how certain things are paid out, but still doing it by himself, not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Well, Mike was a fantastic guest. I can't wait till we have him back on because we got a million more questions. Now let's turn our attention to the Chicago Bears. They played their only preseason game at Soldier Field on Saturday against the Cincinnati Bengals. And give me your overall thoughts about the game. Go ahead and take it away.
Well, first, before I forget,
okay,
I had posted last week after the Buffalo game that it wouldn't surprise me if there's a pretty big crowd at Soldier Field, being it's the only game. It's a Saturday at noon game, and with the excitement of Caleb, because you've been to preseason games, the stadium's half full.
Oh, yep.
Probably 90% of the time. They've had now you were at the game, so you could see it better than me, but on TV, it looked like it was pretty close to a full house.
It was 98% full, I would venture to say. Yeah.
And, that was nice to see in a preseason game. Now, granted, the tickets are already sold. It doesn't mean that by people not showing up, the Bears are going to lose money, but it's the ticket holders who are wasting money unless they were able to sell the tickets. But I like the fact that, the fan base was there. That's exciting. I posted the other day, I go, yeah, the Bears are undefeated. They've won 3 games, and they've looked good in each game. But these aren't lousy teams they're playing. They're playing the best teams in the AFC. Houston was a playoff team last year and projected to possibly being a contender this year. Buffalo's a contender every year. Cincinnati in the last few years has been a contender every year. They've been in a Super Bowl recently. And then on Thursday, they play the world champs, 2-time world champs. So it's a hell of a schedule. And for them, and to have those teams to play against as you're preparing for the regular season, to me, that only helps. And what I posted the other day is, though, the Bears aren't just beating the teams, they're making it look easy.
Yeah.
And somebody said, well, hold on, the Cincinnati starters didn't play. Well, so what? It's still, the team looked good. The offense started slow for whatever reason, but then once they got into their groove, which was the 4 series, Then the final 2 series that Caleb was in, they moved the ball really well. They had some big plays. He had the big play for the touchdown. If Rome had looked at where his feet was, that he wouldn't. Caleb wouldn't have needed to run for the touchdown because he would have had a pass for a touchdown a play or two before. But it was a good game. The defense all preseason has been outstanding. I don't care who's in. First team, second team, or third team. They're playing good football. There's a lot of competition on this roster, and the final decisions are going to be really tough to make. Now, hey, there's about 35 or 40 guys that are locks. But, that last 14 or so, there might be 20 guys, 22 guys competing for those positions. And how they actually do it could prove out to be really interesting. And I'm going to write about this later in the week, but I'll mention it now. Some of the stuff you can do is, with a vested veteran. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a guy who's got 4 years in the league. If he is on the roster for the first game, then his salary's guaranteed for the rest of the season, even if he gets cut after week 3. But if you bring him in after the first game, so for game 2, now it's week to week. You could see where I'm going here is you could see some veterans that you thought were going to make the team get cut. Bears make little side deals with them because they are veterans and they don't pass through waivers, so they can't get claimed. And say, we're going to bring you back after the first game. And, they might give them a little bonus, signing bonus, when they bring them back after the first game to make up for losing that. But they still don't have that guaranteed salary. Now, the only way they're going to probably go somewhere else if somebody's going to put them on the roster for game 1, but then that person's got to guarantee the salary, and do they want to do that? So generally speaking, across the league, you see a number of vested veterans signed after week 1, week 2 for guys that got cut at the end of preseason. And it could be a guy on the street, like Ngakwe or something like that. Somebody say, I don't want to pay him the whole year because I'm not sure what kind of condition he is, but I'll bring him in after that. And go from there. So stuff goes on. The thing that surprised me was on Friday or Saturday, they activated from NIL, right? NFI, non-football injury, Magaji. And it surprised me only because this is a short week. And are they even going to have a padded practice? They might have to have one, because if they don't have one, is he going to play Thursday? And then after that, next week's another short week because they give the players off for part of the week. You've got final cutdown, etc. You're going to have probably 3 practices next week, and you might not have, maybe you'll have one padded practice. So then once the season starts, you only get 12. So how ready is he? And then I started thinking, I go, well, could he, when nobody's looking, be doing a lot on the side that nobody knew about? Probably something I shouldn't say, but, and because, you got to go through that ramp up period, and maybe he's technically already gone through it. Let's go, and a perfect example would be last week. They signed Hutchins on Monday or Tuesday? Monday, I think. And he had not been in any camp. He had hurt his knee, had surgery, wasn't ready to play. So when he could pass a physical and be ready to play, the Bears signed him to a contract. Hell, he played over a quarter on Saturday after a week's practice. So that tells me, okay, Amagaji's almost the same situation. Could he be playing a quarter or more this Thursday night in Kansas City just to see what you have?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's one of the things to watch.
I'll tell you what, Hutchins played pretty darn good. If you watch it now, but what they did different with him, for the most part, they were still going left tackle, right tackle on defense.
Mhm.
So both of them had to play 1, both of them had to play the 3, depending on the formation. When he was in there, he was strictly a 1. Because I made track, I kept track of it just to see. So which tells me they were just, he had only a couple days of practice. We'll get you in there at 1 position, not 2 positions. But he got some penetration. I don't remember if he had a tackle, but he had a pressure. But for a guy that has missed all the camp, it was like jumped out. But I think we talked about him last week. I really like this guy on tape. He's a good football player. If he can put together another strong game against Kansas City, personally, I think you'd put him on the practice squad. And then when you're 100% sure he's ready, you'd bring him back. But I wouldn't be shocked if he made the club either.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either. Everyone in the chat has talked about perhaps signing one of those defensive ends that are on the street. I've actually started to kind of look around at what players might be on the bubble. And so the Indianapolis Colts have a kid named Dio Ode Ingbro. I'm sorry.
He's a 2nd-round pick, and they like him.
Yes, I know they like him a lot, and there's a lot to like. But they played him an awful lot in the last preseason game and did not play many of their other starters. So the Indianapolis Star newspaper started to speculate what's going on here. And the player was asked after the game. He said, I don't know. So I'm, of course, wondering, were they displaying him for trade purposes? And so if you like him, I know you like him. And so would you entertain a trade of, say, perhaps Khalil Herbert and a draft pick for this pass rushing defensive end? He had 8 sacks last season.
It's a good question, and I don't really have the answer. And that's not a question that I'm going to call up Chris and ask him the answer to.
Sure. Yeah. I wouldn't either.
none of my business right now.
Right.
So, but you look at their roster, they lost a pass rusher early on, and one of the guys that was supposed to figure in the rotation. So, and then they drafted Latu in the 1st round, but they're still down 1. And so he may be available, but I can't say it's a must unless there's another position they are looking for. They got a pretty good running back. So like you said, Khalil Herbert, they got a pretty good running back situation. So I don't know if that would be a situation they're doing. And as far as out in the street right now, there's one guy. Everybody is gone except Ngakwe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so who's out? If you're looking for somebody on the street, there's nobody there. So now it is trade or cut, but. Yeah, they were in on the Judon thing. And what's funny, we can talk about that just for a second.
Sure.
Because Eric Durwacker sent me a text this morning, and I guess, using the quote Biggs had in his 10 things to summarize the game, and then Albert Breer has had stuff. Somebody else has had stuff. There's been like 5 different stories about what happened going on with that trade. One from Pioli, who happened to be here that day watching practice, probably as part of the NFL Network. And Pioli said on the NFL Network, and you can find it on X, because the Bears were talking to the agent. And if the top Bears are talking to the agent, that means they're talking contract. But Biggs was saying they're trying to make a trade for, without having to redo the contract, play on his current contract, which is, peanuts for a guy like that. There's some incentives in it for him to make money, but the base rate of the contract is like $6.5 million or something, which is very, very affordable for him. There's been so many different stories that I honestly think that nobody knows what the hell really happened. What is the real truth? Yeah. I still don't believe for a second they offered a 3rd, but now if they weren't going to do the contract, that means you're paying a third for a rental because you're gonna probably let him go after this year, especially if he's looking for some big money. So, the whole situation is, what really did happen, and are we ever going to know? That's the way I look at it, anyway.
Well, I think Poles is telling him, don't overend whatever you do on a defensive end, because we've got a plan on maintaining the salary structure, not just this year, but for years to come.
Right.
And so a lot of us,
you sign anything, you gotta figure in the long-term implications of the contract, because there's other people going to be coming up.
I'd love to see that spreadsheet, where you type in Matthew Judon's name and his salary, and all of a sudden the numbers change around and stuff. I bet you, they have a very detailed spreadsheet with all the possibilities of what salaries and future contracts and so forth that is helping them guide their way towards making these player personnel decisions. Speaking of player personnel, I again am impressed with Gervon Dexter and the fact that he is playing this one tech position. In fact, I got a clip here.
He's playing 1 and 3, but Biggins is playing 3.
Yeah.
See,
exactly.
That's Biggins playing 3 right there.
Right.
And Gervon playing the 1, but that's what I mean, now it's the opposite.
Yep.
And it's because they're playing left and right tackle.
That's amazing. And this defensive line may not really need a lot of help when you're thinking about the improved interior pass rush, and you're looking at Austin Booker. Now, Austin Booker, we can't sit here and expect him to have a Anderson. What was it, Mark Anderson or Nick?
Anderson.
Mark Anderson type season where he had
12. Mark Anderson had 12 sacks as a rookie.
Wow, amazing. But that kid is going to help this pass rush. There's no doubt about it. And if we get him in at third down,
you got to have 4 guys. So you got a 4-man rotation. So who are the 4? Now, if they had gotten Judon, Sweat and Judon would have been your 1 and 2. And then Booker would have been your 3. Who's your 4? Okay, is that Walker? Because Walker, if you look at some of these packages they've done in the preseason, Walker may play your base downs at end, and then he's moved inside in pass rush situations. So really in a sub package, like a 3rd and long, he's moved inside and played tackle, which is a good idea because most of his production as a pass rusher has been inside throughout his career. Then you got this Hardy kid, and Hardy's had an outstanding preseason. You can't take it away from him. But I go back to last year because this is where it gets confusing. You go back to last year where Travis Gibson, and I can't remember the other guy's name, both of them were like bookend defensive ends, edge players, and getting sack after sack, really had strong preseasons. One of them got claimed. I can't even remember I think both of them went unclaimed and then both signed. And the only one who stayed with a team was Gibson. And Gibson actually went to 2 teams. And so what Hardy has done enough to stick? And I can't say yes, I can't say no, only because of what happened last year. Because they have their mind made up. And could that include getting another veteran somewhere? And like you said, maybe this kid at Indy's available. Maybe there's somebody else available with another club. I've gone through the rosters too. I can't definitively come up with a name and say, hey, this guy might be available, because you just don't know.
Right. And, of course, it has to be you got a team that might need a cornerback, because we are deep at the cornerback position. I'd hate to move one of the young guys. I love the depth that need a Khalil Herbert. And again, I'm not advocating the trading of Khalil Herbert. I love Khalil Herbert. But if there is a player available at a position of need, and I think we would like to add some more depth to that defensive line, then I would consider trading Herbert. Wouldn't you, Greg?
Yeah, I've said this a number of times. I even wrote about it, that Herbert might be the runner that they have. I haven't seen enough of Swift to say how good, because he rarely touched the ball in the preseason, like one reception and one run or something like that. They're saving him for the first game. Herbert's gotten a lot of carries. Everybody knows he can carry the ball, and he's a pretty good ball carrier. But he also is a get your quarterback killed type of blocker. We've all seen that. When you look at the end zone shot, it's like he's almost an Olay blocker. Mm-hmm. And when you put him out to run a route, it's 50-50 if he's going to catch the ball. So, he's a one-trick pony. He's a runner. He doesn't have the skill set that you want. For some reason, fans don't like Roschon, or there's a group of fans that don't like Roschon.
Yes.
I can tell you this. People in Hallis Hall like him, and they like him a lot. And it's, okay, who's going to be number 3? And I thought when they signed him, haven't done tape on him, that Wheeler could fit in. He still hasn't done any return work in a game. He might have done it in practice. He hasn't done it in a game. But he's so explosive. Mm-hmm. And he can block. He works on his blocking hard. So I'd say he's better than Herbert is right now in that area. And Herbert, you got to figure in too, he's in the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring him back next year.
Right.
And so the difference is, do I take something this year, albeit a 6 or a 7, versus not getting anything when he goes into free agency? And I don't want to hear depending on the contract, we'll get a comp. Well, he's a running back, so you're not going to get a big contract. And number 2, the comp form, if people think that, when you sign a guy, we're going to get a 3 off of that contract, it doesn't work that way. It works at the total of contracts signed versus the total of contracts lost. And then play time the following season. So a guy could get a real big contract, and then he gets hurt in the first or second game. That washes that contract right out.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Okay. I had a question here from Creighton. He says, okay, Greg, could Ryan Poles make a big move like the Khalil Mack deal? And he threw out a name. What about Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys? Their contract issues and so forth. Could you see?
I mean, he's their best defensive player. So
one of the best in the league.
Yeah. I can't see it. Does that mean it's not going to happen? Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, I can't. It's not that I can't see the Bears trading for him. I can't see Dallas moving him.
Yeah, I hear you.
But Dallas is in trouble. They got a lot of guys they got to freaking pay now.
CeeDee Lamb is still holding out. Yeah,
Dak, they got. It's either let Dak go or they got to pay him. Then they got to pay Parsons, and Parsons is going to be getting, based on his production the first few years of the league, he's going to get a better deal than Sweat got.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He will. Parsons will be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL when he renews his contract.
He's the guy that breaks the rule on you want length at the defensive end position because he's got short arms.
Yeah.
But there's always an exception. You're going to find one guy that's an exception to the rule. But unless they screwed up his arm length, he's got like 31.5-inch arms. Mm-hmm. But he's so strong, so explosive, so quick that he's able to elude blocks really, really well. What would you have to pay to get him? Well, you're giving up a 1 for sure. And, probably more, based on the production.
Yeah. So what would you respond to this hypothetical? Ryan Poles gives you a call and he says, Greg, I'd love your 2 cents on this. What do you think this team needs? I've got an opportunity to make a deal for an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. I can only afford one. I can't tell you the names, but I can tell you that these guys would improve either the offensive line or defensive line. What right now do you think we need most?
In real fairness, as we speak today, this could change Thursday night. As we speak today, a backup left tackle.
Oh, now does that mean your confidence in Braxton has wavered a little bit, or
no? I said a backup left tackle.
Yeah.
I didn't say a starting left tackle.
Okay.
So, but because if he goes down, nobody can play that position.
Yeah.
Larry Borom cannot play left tackle.
No, huh?
No, he can try.
Yeah.
And he'll want something. He's going to be the weak point of the line if he's in there. You got him at right tackle, it's a different story. But at left tackle, even watching in the preseason, to me, he just doesn't do enough.
Yeah,
feel different. I don't think he's good enough. That's why I said my opinion could change Thursday, because if Amagaji plays and on no training camp at all, no off-season program actually shows something, well, then that's a plus.
Yeah, indeed. Looking forward to hopefully seeing Karan play on Thursday. And Creighton says that Pryor can play left tackle, but we haven't seen
Pryor
him
has played left tackle and started at left tackle in the league. And he is he's for all intents and purposes, he might be your lineman number 6 because he can back up at right tackle and a guard, depending on, if he's not your number 6, if a center goes down. There's different. Okay, here's the thing. Bates doesn't play because he's hurt. Nobody knows what his injury is because you don't have to say what their injury is.
All right.
Okay, somebody said the other day that somebody's got a toe injury, and it's Jacob Martin, the defensive end, who they were really high on, and he hasn't played a snap in the 3 preseason games. So it said he's got a toe, so maybe he's got a turf toe or something, which can be a painful injury and can linger for a while. So do they let him sleep by and get him on the team, or see a guy like I mentioned earlier in the show where, okay, we'll cut him next week, and then we'll bring him back after the first game. We'll try to get by the first game without him, and then gives it a couple more weeks to heal, and his contract isn't guaranteed then for the season because he's not on the roster. Or do they go out and get somebody? There's just a lot of different things. Bates didn't play. How bad is Bates hurt? Okay, so because Bates is hurt, on your original 53, I never say it's the final because it's always fluid. Are you going to have 10 or 9 offense? You usually keep 9.
Right.
Are you going to keep 10 because you got a couple of guys dinged up? And then you're still only going to dress 7 of those guys on Sunday for the game.
Some big decisions have to be made in this game against Kansas City, as you said earlier, could help the Bears make those decisions. Levante Rogers says, Greg, with Amagaji returning from the NFI, where do you see him fitting best this year, tackle or guard? I think you answered that.
I thought he was going to be a swing guy at the left guard and left tackle position. But right now, I don't see a backup left tackle on this roster. Yeah, Pryor could do it. And Pryor's going to do it better than Borom can do it. But you can use him. But he's got he hasn't had a training camp. So his training camp is like today and tomorrow.
That's ridiculous.
And a little bit of practice Wednesday. And then, they got to, Wednesday they're not going to do much. They got a game Thursday. So it's today and tomorrow, really. And then he's going to have some practices next week, but there's no game. So you got one chance to look at him And are they going to take that chance this week? None of us can answer that right now.
Exactly. J2K says, with Jatari Carter taking left tackle reps in preseason, could he make the team as a backup left tackle or even as a guard?
Going into Saturday's game, I would say yes. I did not. Now, I got to go back and review all the tape on the second half. I did not see him lined up at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He did play left guard in the second half. He did not play left tackle. But here's the interesting thing. He was the number 3 left guard in that game. Murray played left guard. At first, Tevin started, then Murray played, then Carter played. Now, that doesn't always mean stuff because they can play games with how they use guys in the preseason and, try to make other teams think that certain things are going to happen. But if he was going to be a guy that you thought could be your backup left tackle, I would think you would have wanted to see some reps of him at that game at the position on Saturday against Cincinnati. And we didn't.
Right. Our up this question was not Quran present book stuff, meaning the classroom stuff, even if not on the field during training camp. And Amagaji is there.
He's been there the whole time.
Right.
So I think they got a little turf room inside. I'm saying this. I don't know anything. It just wouldn't shock me. He's been doing stuff inside that, maybe it's been a quarter speed, 1/3 speed or whatever, but and last week he was in public running around. Remember we talked about he's been running around at practice this week. Maybe they're going to activate him for this game, and they never did. So that's why I thought, wow, I just thought that, given the way how you could keep him on NFI, he's games, then you can, anytime after that, you can semi-activate him and that you can put him through an open practice period. You can practice for 21 days. And then you make a decision. You either bring him up to the varsity or you keep him down for the rest of the season. I thought that was what they're probably going to do. And that's what leads me to believe that he's been doing stuff we don't know about.
Yeah, interesting. So offensive line, defensive line could use some upgrades as of today, as Greg says, but Thursday could provide some answers. What about the tight end position? Are you feeling good about Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett there and the battle, third and fourth, potentially fourth tight end position? What are your thoughts there?
I don't think they keep a 4. I think they keep 3. And then your next guy, or maybe even your next 2, are on the practice squad.
Okay, and so has anyone emerged as that third tight end? That it has to be the big guy.
Yeah, he's that's a lock.
Yeah,
the fourth guy. There's some interest. I mean, if there was a fourth guy, Bates has done some stuff. Sweeney's done some stuff. Carlson's done some stuff. I mean, you could make a case for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wide receiver. Okay, who's wide receiver 5 and who's wide receiver 6?
Yeah, big questions to be answered.
And there's people who help themselves out on Saturday.
Yeah. Kay says, would they keep a 4 tight end because of the new kickoff rules? And I'm still trying to figure out what is the body type that is needed for these kickoff rules. I haven't gotten a clue on that yet.
No, and it's who the backup linebackers are going to be. And is it going to be – because last year they went into a lot of games with 5. And so are they going to go 5 or 6? Because for most of the game, you're playing just 2. And so, like the kid they drafted, Sewell, who they drafted last year, he hasn't stepped on the field yet. Does he end up on IR because they got a draft choice invested in him? Jones has done something. Amen, however you say his name, has done some things.
Yes.
You know, so there's some really interesting questions as to who these backups are. And what we don't know, part of it is not just how they practice, but how they know their assignments. And so we can see them running around on the field and making plays. You think, oh, that guy's a really good football player, but he could be doing it all wrong for all we know. Mm-hmm. Which reminds me, because there was a thing I saw last week, and it was on Lawrence Taylor. And so he's in the game, and he's supposed to drop into coverage. And this is real early in his career. But he sees an opening, and he instead rushes the passer and gets a sack. And he comes off the field, and Parcells is telling the story. He says, I'm just staring at him. And he says, I'm giving him that cold stare. And he goes, what's wrong? I made the sack. And he goes, you were supposed to drop. So he goes, later on in the game, same situation, called the same defensive play. And he does the same thing. He rushes the passer, but not only does he rush the passer, he causes a strip sack, and Martin picks up the ball and takes it in for a touchdown. So you get a defensive touchdown. So he's a hero. He comes off the field. Everybody's patting him on the back. He goes, I'm just staring him cold. He says, you son of a bitch, you did it wrong again. He goes, the stuff you're doing, we don't even have in the playbook. And he said, LT turns and said, then you better install it tomorrow.
Well done, LT. Yeah, that's the kind of dilemma that a coach has. You don't want players freelancing, because then you've got the whole team freelancing. You don't have any order. But when a player does freelance, the talent of Lawrence Taylor, you got to start making some changes in adapting to his phenomenal athletic strengths. All right, some more questions here, Greg. Let's see. Let's go with Samo first. He says, with the emergence of Booker and Hardy, who look to be two good development rushers who can win one-on-ones, is the bigger line for a that can play better? And he's also concerned about the paddle problems that Dexter is still having.
No, I think they're extremely happy with Dexter. I obviously I could be wrong. I don't think that interior defensive line is even in the equation for the decision makers. The only one that could be is edge, because obviously they tried to get one last week, and that one failed. And after that failed, Hardy and Booker had put together another good game. I just do they trust Hardy for the regular season? And like I'm repeating myself, because we can go back to last year, and Travis Gibson had an outstanding. I remember we did a show. Said, how do you cut this guy? Yeah, he was a bubble guy coming into camp. He had a great camp, great preseason. He got cut. So who knows what they're thinking? Yeah.
Phenomenal. Let us go to our next question here. It is from FFG Style. Greg, does Jacob Martin still have an opportunity to make this team, given that he's not been playing this preseason?
We touched on a little while ago. I don't know. They were expecting a lot out of him. And as y'all know, you don't have to state what a guy's injury is during the preseason. You have to once the season starts. So we've been all guessing. Somebody, I think it was Biggs, said he's got a toe injury. So obviously he knew, and then he let it out. So how long is that going to be out? He could be a guy that's IR'd. Or, like I said, he could be a guy that if they really think he can help this team, because he had his best season in his whole career playing in this scheme in 2021. And he's a guy that before he hurt the toe and during the off-season program, during OTAs, they really liked. They thought he was going to be a pretty good player. We saw some clips. It might have been in the first Hard Knocks or just some stuff on TV. He was beating people pretty easily in one-on-ones. A real nice spin move. And so, I don't have the answer. The average fan's going to say, how can you keep him? He hasn't played. Well, like I say, that's why practice is important. We don't see the practices, but the coaches do, and they know what's going on upstairs as far as the kid is.
This is coaches put as much an emphasis on the productivity and performances of practices as they do now in the NFL, because it seems like they really, really value practice reps and study them on tape, and that's a big part of whether they're going to keep a player or not.
Yeah, I mean, practices are extremely important. Sometimes guys who are backups don't get the reps in practice that they need to show what they can do. And then you throw them in a game and it might play 10 or 15 reps in the game. And then those 10 or 15 reps, they start showing you stuff that you didn't know they had. And so now it's like, okay, we got to do something. And sometimes it's just keep them on the practice squad, because, we can sit here and say, if you cut him, he's going to get claimed. If you cut him, he's going to get claimed. Every team is in that same situation. There's guys they want to bring back. And yeah, some guys you're going to lose. But you hope it's guys you don't mind losing.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Because you got, and just take it from there. This team has played so well in the preseason, it wouldn't shock me to see 4 or 5 guys get claimed.
Frozen screen, so I put my internet.
You keep raising up like all the time.
Okay, well, the show must go on, though. Here's another question for you. J2K asked, Greg, with Bayless switching positions mid-camp, I don't think he makes the team. Have you seen a player make a late position change and still make the roster? Just seems unlikely to me. What do you think?
I think he's a 50-50 guy, and he's in with Wheeler. Mm-hmm. He can play special teams. He can cover on special teams. They love his speed. And don't forget this. Poles used a 3rd-round pick on him. He's got to really fail if he thinks there's and go back to Hard Knocks. And the first one, they're talking about how the running back coach, was real excited about him in the running back room. So I don't think it's a lock he gets cut. I think there's going to be some surprises both ways. And cuts will probably start happening on Saturday, because you've got so many people you got to cut, and it's got to be done by next Tuesday. So we'll see.
A lot of people are praising Ian Wheeler, but he's an easy guy to get through waivers and stash into the practice squad, because everybody, just about every team has running backs like Wheeler, low round draft picks or undrafted who so they're probably not going to reach for Wheeler.
But not everybody's got a guy who showed the speed that he had.
That is
just
true.
To play devil's advocate.
Yeah, I get you. All right, another question here comes from a lot of people are talking about Blasting Game. Squeezy is wondering about him. We had another comment that Blasting Game adds nothing. What say you about the fullback?
Well, somebody made a comment on X last week, and he goes, well, Walden's didn't have a fullback in Seattle, so that means Blasting Game's gone. And I commented to that, Walden didn't have a fullback because he didn't have one. What if he had one? So they used 4 tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that 4th tight end doing some of that offset fullback stuff.
Okay.
There's not that many fullbacks around. It's a bastard position now. So now you could look at this offense, and again, it's an offshoot of the Shanahan offense, and Shanahan uses a fullback a lot. And that guy goes to the Pro Bowl. Is the only fullback in the Pro Bowl. So it's an interesting question. Put it this way: if you don't keep him, you're keeping a fourth tight end. But I haven't seen a tight end line up in the backfield yet in the preseason. Could they have practiced? Sure, but we haven't seen it.
Yeah. What about Jaquan Brisker? Flex is asking, do you know anything about Brisker's condition? Is Jonathan Owens the next safety up in the rotation if Brisker is not ready to go week 1? Owens did start the game on Saturday.
Owens played pretty good.
Yes, he did. He's a good player.
Yeah, he's been a starter the last 2 years in the league. He's a good football player.
Really is.
To be honest with you, I don't know how they got him as cheap as they did. Is Brisker the next guy up, or what's wrong with Brisker? I don't know what. Again, they don't tell you what the injury is, so I don't know what's wrong with him. Yes, I would assume that Owens is the next guy up, but what's the name? Hicks, number 22. He's jumped out in both preseason or all 3 preseason games, making plays.
Yeah. That might be the one area. I wouldn't say that depth scares me because you just mentioned Owens and Hicks. So that gives me good depth. But what everybody is concerned of, like Mr. Shorty has up on the screen, is that Brisker just has a hard time staying healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that just happens with some guys. I don't have an answer. He came into camp really prepared. He claimed to be in best shape of his life, and then he gets dinged up again. What's the injury? What caused the injury? And how long is it going to be out?
Mm-hmm. Did it bother you that Simone Biles, the wife of Jonathan Owens, showed up to the Bears game wearing a jacket that had images that was splattered with images of Jonathan Owens in a Packers uniform? Did that bother you?
No, not in the slightest. I think she's more worrying something about her husband and not thinking about the Green Bay Chicago rivalry, which she probably knows very little about, even though he played in Green Bay last year. He was only in Green Bay 1 year. She's thinking about something, she's not thinking about that or pleasing the fans. She's thinking more about the boot she had on her left ankle. You know why?
That's right.
How tough is she that when she had something wrong with her ankle, yet she still won 3 gold medals?
How about that? Unbelievable. She's going to be in town with the U.S. women's gymnastics team. They've got some event at the United Center, so hopefully we'll be seeing her a lot more at Soldier Field.
I think it's a lot. They do something like just bring her out at halftime or before a game, and just to honor her a little bit.
Yeah, indeed. Broski Bear says, "Yeah, wearing Packers anything is unacceptable. Stop making excuses because she's a woman."
I'm not making excuses. Is what it is. I guarantee you, she won't do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't say that we're making or anyone's making excuses because she's a woman, but the fact that she's an Olympic gold medalist and she's been focused on her career, I can definitely give somebody a little some accomplishments.
I'll throw them a pass.
Is regarding roster cutdowns. Aldo, is Greg going to wait until Wednesday to talk roster cutdowns? So yeah, we have to. I mean, unless you got information on Tuesday, we can go on Tuesday.
Well, you got till. I got to look at the time. I don't know if it's noon Tuesday. Normal cut down is 3:00.
3, right?
Yeah. Now, is it noon or is it still going to be 3? I know that the Wednesday at noon, you can actually it's 11:00 our time. It's noon New York time. Mm-hmm. You can bring back your practice squad players.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, best way to stay on top of what our schedule is going to be. Everyone is subscribed to the channel. You'll get updates.
I think we'll play it. The smart thing might be to play it by ear and see what's going on and how it comes off. And then we can say, I mean, Tuesday for me, unless we did it later Tuesday, because of the crew that comes here on Tuesdays, it's bad to do it this time. Mm-hmm. If we went at 3:00, could we? But are we going to know all the names by 3:00? Because, some teams withhold the names for a while.
Right.
Maybe it is better we wait till Wednesday. Maybe we wait till Wednesday afternoon because, wait a minute, what's the date next Wednesday? I might not be available till late Wednesday afternoon.
Next Wednesday is the 28th.
I got something I got to do downtown Waukegan. No, that's next Tuesday. So, yeah, Wednesday's good. So, Wednesday's going to be pretty much out of the question for me next week.
Okay.
Or Tuesday, rather, out of the question.
Tuesday's out of the question. Wednesday's good. Kay wanted to know, you think Pettis made the team with his outstanding game, 2 touchdown receptions?
It's not that he can be a reliable receiver. It's what's he give you on special teams. So remember this: your number 4 or number 5 and number 6 wide receivers have to be good special teams players. And so it's like Johnson. Now, who knows what his injury is, but he hasn't played since he had that big opening game. But he can play on specials. Can Pettis cover? He's been used on the cover teams 2 years ago. Last year he was hurt and didn't play all year. He was a decent punt returner 2 years ago. He flubbed his one chance this year in preseason. I don't know because your 5th and 6th receivers on the roster may not be your 5th and 6th pure receivers because they don't give you what the other guys do. They're going to keep special teamers over them.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. More questions are coming in. Jim has this one. You guys have touched on commentary online criticizing Keenan on speed and route running in the first couple of games. Is there anything to be concerned about there? Players can sometimes hit over the hill at a drop of a dime. Do you think we might be seeing some concerns with Keenan Allen? Or no?
I think we would have known about it from practice.
Yeah.
And Keenan Allen is supposed to have some good. Who cares what he does in the preseason? Keenan Allen, if you listen to him talk, he's one of the reasons he's really excited about being here is the receiver coach who we worked for and with the Chargers the last couple of years in Beatty, and they know each other. And Beatty knows how he gets ready for the game. How long did he play on Saturday besides a couple series? Who cares? Mm-hmm. Some veterans you've got to, this guy is like could be a Hall of Fame type player with the numbers he's had to date. He's had over 100 catches several times in his career. In fact, last year he had his best year when you look at the everything that was involved. And he takes care of himself. He's in good condition. He's an excellent route runner. He's never been a speedster.
Right.
It's his route running ability, and that's why they got him in at the slot. So, he gonna be here. Whether I think some people who just don't understand. I never heard anything about it actually until this morning, and I started seeing some things on X about it, and I go, are these people nuts? I mean, It's not what we're hearing, and that's from people that are there every day.
Yeah. All right. Let's see another couple more, and then we'll head home. AW has a question, and you've talked about this before, but I'd love to get your scouting report on Austin Booker. AW says it looks like Booker's hands and feet coordination are advanced for a rookie. Do you see that, Greg?
Well, Flus isn't really good. First of all, you go back to his tape last year, and you saw really good hand use. And even though he's a lean guy, he can make himself skinny, for lack of a better term, in that he finds his way to fit through cracks and to slip blocks. But he's just got a natural instinct about him that make him use that just help him use his hands that much more, and I don't think he's even shown his whole arsenal yet. I think he's just shown part of it. But I go with what Flus says. He kind of thinks on the fly, and he never goes back to he doesn't have like a count on type move that he's always going to go back to. He's always trying to learn stuff. And he said, when you listen to him talk, that he's trying. So he's set the edge. He's gotten off blocks to make tackles or be the second guy in on the tackle, whatever. I've seen nothing wrong with his play against the run. I think he's like way ahead of where they anticipated him to be this year.
Outstanding. And no quarterback controversy regarding the number 2 position. It's Tyson Bagents, right?
No question.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm just not locked into the fact that Rippon's number 3.
You're not?
No.
Okay, so what do you think could possibly happen there?
Well, unless they could, somebody's going on a practice squad.
Yeah.
Is that going to be Rippon or the other kid?
What's his name? Reed? Oh.
And Austin Reed from Western Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And, Reed's 24 years old, I think. Rippon's been around. Do you want another year? But then, you could do it 2 ways. Mm-hmm. Bagent's only in his second year. Do you want somebody that has a little bit of experience, even though most of it is a backup, or do you want to go with the guy who has the more upside? And the more upside would be Reed. So I don't know. And it could be, regardless, he's going to be on the practice squad. And if somebody wanted to sign Rippon, I don't know if they'd be all upset about it, because then they could have their practice squad quarterback be Reed.
We've seen in the past teams have joint practices and one team falling in love with another team's player and so forth. Could that potentially happen again, as Samo? He says, with the Bears' depth at running back and the Bengals' loss at running back during those joint practices, do we think there's a trade possibility for Khalil Herbert? Any thoughts on that, Greg?
That's a possibility. It's it could work both ways. There could be like last year they had 2 or 3 practices with the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
This year you had 1 in the rain. So you didn't get everything you wanted to get done in that practice, and you only had 1 day. But there could be a situation, and I'm emphasizing could be, where Duke Tobin or Ryan Poles could talk, and Duke could say, hey, we might need so-and-so. And give them a position or whatever if you got somebody available. Or Poles could do the same thing. Just that little side talk while they're watching practice. And that stuff happens. Right. But it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's just basically opening up the dialogue.
Mm. Yeah, and people in the chat are like KK saying, why do so many people want to trade Herbert? I don't think that there is a desire to trade Herbert. It's just the running back room is deep. And if you need a player position, he becomes expendable given he's in the final year of his contract.
Well, it's that, and then you go if Sweat's in the game or Sweet's in the game, you're gonna Swift, excuse me. You're going to you don't know if they're gonna run or pass, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If Roshan Johnson's in the game, you don't know if they're gonna run or pass. If Khalil Herbert's in the game, chances are they're running the ball.
Yeah. And if
And
he's
so right away he's giving it away. You're now that's not going to happen 100% of the time, but he can't pass block very well, and he can't catch very well.
right.
So it's probably a good bet he's in there to run the ball.
Indeed. All right, let's pull the plug on this episode of GTF Gabriel Talks Football. The Bears play Thursday, but Greg and I will be back next week to talk about roster cutdowns. And if anything important happens, I'll call Greg and see if we can pop on for a few minutes to talk about it, do an emergency broadcast. Greg, you had another one out of the park today. Mike McCartney, thank you very much for being our guest. You were sensational. Any final words, Greg?
No, I don't. One thing I was going to say about Mike he obviously didn't get the gig because nobody got being the Caleb, well, not to say advisor, but agent. Mm-hmm. He was one of the finalists. It ended up nobody got it, but he had a lot of discussions with the dad and met with the kid. I'm not sure if he met with the kid. I know he met with the dad, okay. And I know that he and the dad had a good relationship. And, it never came to fruition as it did with nobody. But, I never was going to put that out publicly because it just wasn't right. But now that it's after the fact, who cares? Yeah.
Well, that would have been a nice combination because, again, listening to Mike, not only here, but in other shows and knowing about the man, he's a man of family and faith, and he's just he does it the right way.
Yes.
Is that fair? Yeah. So again, you can catch this show on demand. Audio version will be out this afternoon. Greg, we'll see you next week. And
sounds good, buddy.
Thank you, everyone in the chat. Bye-bye.
See you later.